Mac Pro, anyone? Mac Pro? Welcome to another episode of 9 to 5 Mac Weekly, where we'll be spending another year watching an Apple event at home, but it's okay, because I probably was not going to get invited anyway. I am your host, Miles Somerville, and if you're a fan of good ideas, consider subscribing to the channel for future content like this. WWDC 2022 was just announced, and so I want to talk about what hardware we can expect to see at this event, in addition to the expected software updates. Before we get into what we expect to see at this year's WWDC, let's backtrack and go over what we got last year. And hopefully I don't fall asleep, because last year's event was pretty boring, quite honestly. We had a handful of cool software features announced for iOS and macOS, but we're just now getting a lot of those features they announced last year. Universal Control is a pretty good example of a feature that took months for Apple to release in a public version of macOS. Outside of those features, there was no hardware at the event. Not that we should always expect hardware, because WWDC is a software-focused event, but Apple literally verbally teased new hardware at their March event. So let's go back to the good old rumor mill and see what Macs we should be expecting this year, because there are a handful, but only a few are likely going to make an appearance at this event in June. I think I'm going to start with the least likely products to get announced at WWDC and work my way up. So we're going to start with the 13-inch MacBook Pro with M2 that's been rumored to come out for a while now. As far as what this update will bring, well, the biggest thing to expect is definitely an upgraded processor, likely called the M2 chip, and this would be made to replace the current $1,300 MacBook Pro with the Touch Bar. There's been a bit of back and forth as to whether this Mac would be redesigned to match the style of the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro, so we're not confident in what's going to happen in that arena, but I honestly think introducing M2 in an old design would be so strange. It'd truly be an iPhone SE type beat, and I'd much rather get that redesign even if it doesn't have all the same ports as the 14 and 16-inch Pro models have. But yeah, I think the chances of this dropping at WWDC is likely like a 3 out of 10, and I wouldn't expect any laptops at this event in general, but who knows? iMac Pro, remember that name? Well, Apple doesn't. The 27-inch iMac in standard and Pro form aren't even available on Apple's website, and if you remember the last Apple event, at the very end, the presenter person said this:
"Making our transition nearly complete, with just one more product to go, Mac Pro."
So if you were to just go by his word, all we have left to complete the transition is Mac Pro, which means that a 27-inch iMac or iMac Pro with Apple Silicon is out of the picture. But according to Mark Gurman, this is what we should be expecting on the Pro side of things for Apple Silicon: a 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro, Mac Studio, Mac Pro, and an iMac Pro powered by M2 Pro and M2 Mac. And his explanation for presenter guy's statement at the end of the keynote is that Apple had to verbally name drop the Mac Pro in order to not confuse customers who may have thought Mac Studio was the direct replacement for Mac Pro. Gurman also said the disappearance of iMac Pro and the 27-inch iMac on the Apple Store allowed Apple to do a verbal sleight of hand, so to speak. Apple's logic is that there can't be an Apple Silicon iMac Pro on the way if the iMac Pro doesn't exist. A discontinued product can't be succeeded. So despite what Apple says, apparently an iMac Pro is still on the table, but the reason why it's essentially impossible for the iMac Pro to be revealed at WWDC is because it's presumably going to run on a Pro variant of M2, which hasn't even been revealed in its standard form. So that pretty much takes iMac Pro out of the running for being revealed at this event, but who knows, we could get some sort of hint at the product's existence in general. Last but not least, Mac Pro. Now, a Mac Pro reveal is a bit of a tricky one, because while we know that for sure a Mac Pro is coming, we don't know whether Apple's going to wait till M2 to reveal it, because if that's the case, we will definitely not see a Mac Pro at this event. But the good news is that Apple has been known to show off Mac Pros at WWDC in the past. So if Apple's making Mac Pro based on M1 architecture, I think it's very likely that we'll see it in some form at this event. From what we know, there are two chips codenamed Jade 2C die and Jade 4C die, and these would be 20 and 40 core CPU configurations for Mac Pro, and the chips would have either 64 core or 128 core GPU options. And with the new Mac Pro, I think we could definitely expect a new Pro Display XDR as well. Just days before Mac Studio was revealed, 9 to 5 Mac exclusively leaked the successor to the current Pro Display XDR. It's rumored to have a 7K display powered by an A-series chip, just like the Studio display that launched last month. We also expect Display to have a larger 36-inch panel, which I think is pretty appropriate for a panel with a 7K resolution. And boy, oh boy, I know these products are going to be expensive, but hopefully the performance of both products will justify the hefty price tags they're surely going to command. But overall, I think the chance of Mac Pro being revealed at this event is like a solid 6 out of 10. There is history of Pro Macs being revealed at WWDC, and Apple literally said it was coming, so that'd be cool to at least see one piece of Mac hardware at this event, because so far we've literally heard nothing about what to expect in terms of software innovations from iPadOS, iOS, and macOS. Lastly though, a product that may not be the most hype, but probably makes the most sense to be revealed at WWDC is the long-rumored VR/AR headset from Apple. We've been hearing about this headset for over a year now and don't have many details as of yet, but we're expecting the headset to feature M1 Pro-like performance, meaning you can expect to do things with this headset on its own that pretty much no other VR headset will be capable of. We also expect this headset to cost around $2,000 at the very least, and honestly, that doesn't sound far off for an Apple-designed VR product that's presumably going to be crazy powerful and presumably made with very solid hardware. And given the fact that this is a brand new platform, Apple's going to need all the developer support they can get, so the chance of this being revealed at WWDC is probably like a 7 out of 10. If it's coming this year, WWDC is definitely the best event for Apple to reveal it. Let's look at some comments. We haven't done that in a while. Jan says, new Mac Pro as the perfect developer machine for RealityOS. I think that would be a killer combo for Apple to reveal both Mac Pro and this VR headset and show what you can do as far as developing prowess on this Mac Pro for RealityOS, presuming that's what it's going to be called. I think that's probably the best sounding name for it thus far. But yeah, I think if this VR/AR headset is ready to be revealed to the public, I think there's a lot Apple could do as far as showing what the Mac side of things can do for this headset. I don't think live keynotes will ever come back. You know, honestly, I kind of disagree with that. I think, especially for their larger events like the iPhone events and their larger Mac events that they have in the fall, I think they would definitely like to have in-person audiences for that when they can. And just the idea of bringing everyone together after years of not being able to do so in this pandemic, I think that's something Apple is definitely looking forward to. And I honestly think whenever this pandemic does end in some form, I think Apple will get back to that sort of stuff. But it doesn't make a difference for me because the chances of me showing up or getting invited to one of these things is slim to none, so I honestly don't care. Lewis says, I would like to see the new Mac Pro with the same form factor. Sorry, I love it, but with different chips inside. It could be 4 Ultras, 8 Ultras, and 16 Ultras. It can be worth it for them to develop a server class Apple Silicon. That's very interesting, and you know, Apple hasn't had too much enterprise focus with all this new Apple Silicon Mac hardware that they've been dropping, but I think just by default with everything these Macs are going to be capable of, they'll kind of tie in that capability as well for the Mac Pro. I don't think they're going to focus on Mac Pro as a server class device. I honestly think the Mac Mini is more suited towards that at the moment, but I definitely think whatever Mac Pro we do get is going to be very capable for that kind of functionality. Charlie says, hoping for some game-changing iPadOS developments. Man, truer words have never been spoken, especially with us getting the M1 chip now inside of the iPad Air in addition to the 2 Pro model iPads. I think it only makes sense that Apple does something with iPadOS. This is exactly what we were saying this time last year. And I know with the pandemic, Apple's had struggles with developing software in general with, you know, the work from home hybrid system they've got going on right now. But I honestly feel as though something's got to change with iPadOS. It's literally still just a blown up version of iOS in most aspects, and that needs to change if they really want iPadOS to stand on its own. iPad sales are still pretty strong in general, but I don't think the iPad as a product is going to be very useful down the line if they don't do something on the software side. But regardless of what hardware we get or don't get, definitely expect a new version of iOS, iPadOS, watchOS, tvOS, and of course, macOS at this event. And let us know in the comments down below which piece of software you're looking forward to the most as far as new features and upgrades. I'm once again holding out for a much more radical change to iPadOS this time around. But outside of that, I think we're in pretty good standing on the software side of things for everything else. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for future content like this. Hopefully we get this Mac Pro in June or some kind of Mac hardware or that VR headset. That would be cool. Yeah. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.